port of Basra in Iraq. An oil tanker is hit while at anchor. Iran released this footage to show it still has the ability to strike oil and gas infrastructure in the heart of the Persian Gulf. At Oman's biggest port, an oil storage facility was hit by an Iranian drone. And in Bahrain, a fuel depot caught fire after being targeted overnight. Oil is the lifeblood of the world economy, and Iran says it will push the price of oil as high as $200 a barrel. A statement attributed to Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, was read out on state television. In it, he vowed to continue attacking US bases and warned the Strait of Hormuz would remain closed. The British government cannot get tankers moving again, but it is under pressure to come up with a plan to protect businesses and households back home from the inflation this conflict is causing.
The best thing for reopening the straits, restarting the shipping, is a de-escalation of the conflict, is a restoration of the stability and confidence in the region.
The price of oil surged back to $100 a barrel today. That's almost 40% higher than before the war began. What really matters now is how long it stays there. Gas prices, of course, have surged as well, and the ripple effects are already being felt. The price of jet fuel, diesel and fertiliser has jumped. The price of steel and aluminium has risen too. And the longer all this continues, the more it will be felt in the form of higher airline tickets, higher construction costs and higher prices in the supermarkets. The only real way to bring energy prices back down is to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Yesterday, just 2 ships passed through. On a normal day, it's closer to 200. America produced more oil last year than Saudi Arabia. President Trump is right when he boasts that higher oil prices bring in more money to the US economy. But they also push up prices at the pump, and ordinary Americans are feeling it, with midterm elections only months away.
I think that the longer this war lasts, the bigger the pressure inside the Republican Party and overall American voters to end the war as soon as possible.
The war in the Gulf is causing disruption thousands of miles away. In Bangladesh, the government's introduced fuel rationing. In New Zealand, flights are being cancelled. In Australia, fuel quality standards have been relaxed. And while a resolution is still possible, for now the conflict and the pressure on energy prices continues. Joel Hills, News at 10.
Well, we can speak now to Debbie, who's just across the border from Iran in northern Iraq. And Debbie, we didn't see Mojtaba Khamenei in person, but it's clear the regime is continuing in exactly the same vein as his father.
Absolutely, Julie, but without seeing the new supreme leader, people are questioning whether it is really him in charge of continuing that hardline rule. It's been almost 2 weeks since that initial strike that killed his father and in which we know Mojtaba Khamenei was injured. So the longer we go without seeing him, the more speculation there is about the seriousness of his injuries and whether he is indeed capable of running the Islamic Republic. In that speech read out on his behalf, he did vow to avenge the death of his father and threatened to open up new fronts in this war. He also said there would be no let-up in the targeting of US bases across this region. So we are among those braced tonight for further attacks. In recent days, there has been an increase in drone, missile and rocket strikes here in Erbil. British forces confirming that last night they shot down 2 drones over a coalition base not far from here. Several US troops, but no British troops were injured in that attack. Julie, tomorrow, Friday, is Al-Quds, an occasion on which usually the Iranian supreme leader would make a speech. So we will be watching very closely to see if Mojtaba Khamenei does appear and perhaps give us an indication of his current physical and political strength.
Indeed. OK, Debbie, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, we can join Dan now in Washington this evening, where President Trump's been speaking. We'll have more on that in a moment, Dan. But first of all, there's news emerging just in the last few minutes of US aircraft involved in an incident in western Iraq. What can you tell us?
That's right, yeah. CENTCOM have confirmed the loss of one KC-135, which is one of these in-flight refueling tankers. They say there was an incident involving two of them. One landed safely, the other one didn't, and there is now an active search and rescue operation going on for the six crew members. So we don't know more than that, or other than they're saying it's not due to either friendly fire or enemy fire. So it's possible it may have been some sort of in-flight collision. We just don't know, but clearly that's an ongoing situation. That situation unfolding just after Donald Trump was on stage, so he didn't comment on that this evening. He also didn't comment on that message from the new Supreme Leader of Iran either, in sharp contrast with his Israeli counterpart, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, said that he wouldn't be taking out any life insurance policies on any leaders of terrorist organisations. We have heard today from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who gave an interview to Sky News, talking about the idea that the US would potentially be using its navy to escort oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, potentially on its own, or either in some sort of international coalition. And he said that was something that had been always been in their planning, a scenario analysis that they had been looking at for weeks and for months, he said. So that might be something that we hear more about going forward as the US continues to count the economic cost of this Operation Epic Fury, but also of the military cost as well, knowing what we know now about this tanker which has gone down, and we're awaiting news about the fate of the crew.
OK, Dan, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, in Lebanon, Israel ramped up its offensive against the Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah. Its increasingly fierce bombardment reached into the centre of the capital, Beirut, not just the southern suburbs, which have been struck so often before, of course. James is there. Just how much worse is this getting? There have been truly terrible scenes of so many people displaced now, James.
It is getting significantly worse. Last night, they say, in response to Israeli attacks, Hezbollah sent more rockets into northern Israel. Immediately, Israel, they say, in response to that, have upped their attacks here. The pictures we can show you now, these are attacks on buildings in downtown Beirut, just a few minutes' walk from the city centre, not in the southern suburbs where Hezbollah has its strongholds. They do give warnings. They tell people to leave, to get out of the area. That reduces casualties, certainly. But we are now in a situation where more than 1 in 7 Lebanese are displaced out of their homes, looking for somewhere to stay. And even then, they're not safe. Many of them are in makeshift camps down on Beirut's famous Corniche here, the seafront. And last night, 2 rockets landed there. One killed 7 people. The other, thankfully, didn't explode. And this comes as an Israeli newspaper is reporting, it's only a report, it's not confirmed, but they're reporting that President Trump has given the Israelis a green light to fully invade Lebanon. Whether it's true or not, it's indicative of the way the Israelis are using this opportunity, while the Americans are doing a lot of their heavy lifting in Iran, to move against Hezbollah. The great fear of many Lebanese is that they will use the same methods against Hezbollah as they used against Hamas in Gaza, leaving whole towns and cities in rubble, having whole populations on the move for fear of their lives.
James, thank you for that. Well, since the start of the war, Israel's Air Force has carried out more than 4,000 sorties into Iran. Iran says 1,300 of its civilians have been killed by Israeli and American attacks. One of the navigators of an Israel F-15 who flew on the first day of combat missions against Iran has spoken to us anonymously. He said his targets are always military bases or missile launchers, and if he didn't take out the launchers, their missiles would be fired into Israel.
The first Israeli air raid of this war involved 200 fast jets flying to Iran simultaneously. The tempo of operations has been such that some crew have been flying 3 sorties a day. And while there are no reported losses, there have been some close shaves.
Have you been frightened at any stage? No, I haven't been frightened. I mean, there are sorties that I didn't partake in, which air crews from my squadron came back to the squadron, and they described, launches who are super close to the jet and are super scary, and that you have to deal with them right away.
Lieutenant A is 22 and a navigator in a two-seat F-15. So far, he has flown 5 sorties into Iranian airspace. Do you think you're responsible for any civilian casualties?
Not in particular, no. The targets are either in super far away locations, such as ground-to-ground missile launchers, which are usually pretty, like, in the middle of nowhere, like a Hunger or something like that. And the other kind of targets are military bases, which don't have civilians in it.
According to Iran's ambassador to the UN, more than 1,300 civilians have been killed in American and Israeli airstrikes so far.
Professional experience to operate this war.
Well, as you can probably hear, there's an air raid siren going off.
Yeah.
A warning of incoming Iranian missiles. Ironic, given that the IDF's primary targets in Iran include the missile network that threatens here. Do you have any reservations about what you're doing?
What do you mean?
Well, you're dropping deadly ordnance on other human beings.
Well, I know that, this kind of question always comes up in terms of the Iron Swords war for the past 2 years. How do fighter jets pilots feels or navigators feel when they're dropping deadly bombs in Gaza in the middle of neighborhoods? The thing is, I have complete and utter trust in the system that chose the targets. And on top of that, the 99% of the targets are military bases or launchers, which I know that these launchers are gonna, kill civilians back in Israel because they're gonna launch a ground-to-ground missile in 2 hours. So I gotta go all the way there as fast as I can and destroy it.
So far, the lieutenant and his colleagues have reduced the number of Iranian missiles being sent this way by around 80% since the first weekend of the war. John Irvine, News at 10, Tel Aviv.
Well, the Iranian regime's suppression of its people remains in force despite everything. So hearing from inside the country is as difficult as ever. And the opinions of ordinary Iranians are as fragmented as ever and changing too, as we've managed to find out.
Up close, a glimpse of what it's like to wake up to the rumble of more bombing.
A lot of us have stayed in our homes. We don't even run away when we hear the sound of the bombing. I see that as just the spirit of Iranians.
I'm here in the Azadi Square in
Sarah, an Iranian Canadian, has been documenting life in Tehran since the war began. In some of her videos, Tehran's streets are quiet, largely undamaged at ground level, although the sky above is blackened. The regime won't let us report from inside Iran, and there is limited footage of the damage being inflicted on residential areas. This is Sarah's account of the aftermath of one blast.
Books and notebooks and what looked like maybe high school exam papers that were all together in one spot. Looked like it was probably a young girl's bedroom.
There is still evidence of Iranians celebrating the assault from the skies, but Sarah thinks the mood is changing, and Ali, a journalist whose identity we're disguising, agrees.
Even for the people who were dissatisfied with the government, now I can say there is a rally around the flag.
Ali says this is a rally in his northern town. He believes the government's been strengthened by war.
maybe they comes to the terms that Islamic Republic is going to last, and if it's going to last, we have to work with it.
But this is a woman listening to a similar rally in the south and insisting it's nothing but regime-choreographed intimidation. We are not afraid, though, she says. One Iranian who's fled this for Turkey and wants to remain anonymous agrees.
I hope that this time, with all the damage they're constantly inflicting on the Islamic Republic, destroying Iran, I hope that this time the regime is finished.
There is no single perspective on this war, just a nation undone from the inside by its own leaders, and now hit from the outside by the fury of others. Rachel Younger, News at 10.